As we're stepping into balance of masculine and feminine, we're having to release old storylines within ourselves about how the masculine and feminine show up, interact with each other, and synchronize together. So while this shows up everywhere in life, right? And like collectively, the imbalance is so huge right now. So that's what we're actually rebalancing by doing that within ourselves, right? So this is the point, is to find the feminine and masculine balance within ourselves. And so we can create that balance within our lives and our relationships as well. As we've made this collective shift to the feminine rising, and by the way, this is not the elimination of the masculine. This is not the suppression of the masculine. That's not what we're doing here. And this is why I am such a huge advocate for speaking on behalf of the balance. Women cannot heal if men don't heal, right? The feminine cannot heal if the masculine does not heal, because we can heal the feminine, but if we're not holding space for the masculine to heal, then we still do not have balance. So that journey of what that means becomes us unpacking how our internal man, how our internal woman, how our internal feminine, masculine is showing up for ourselves, right? And the feminine is exhausted. The feminine energy is she's rising, but she's also like been like suffocated for all of time, right? She's exhausted, she's tired, and she's ready to be held. So as she's come to the surface and the masculine, the true masculine, is starting to rise out of the distortion now to meet her, and he has to learn what that means to actually show up for the feminine. Because in the past, he's acted from a place of ego, and the distorted feminine has interacted with that, right? So now we're really looking at, what does it mean? What does masculine energy truly mean? What does feminine energy truly mean? What does that really look like? And as we step into those energies, the feminine is asking for the masculine to surrender control. This is so huge that's coming through right now. Again, this is happening collectively, the cry of feminine energy, like where is our true masculine counterpart? Where is he? Why is he not by our side? Why has he not stepped up to meet us, right? And the truth is that the divine masculine has to step into his own power. He has to step out of the distorted version of himself, because this distorted male ego cannot match the divine feminine. She will not allow it. So right now, the feminine is calling for deep rest, deep reset, deep allowance, and please take me off your rat race. That is what the feminine is calling for. She is not linear. She is in cycles. She does not live on your time, and she is calling for you to release her from this paradigm. And she's calling for her masculine protector. She's calling for him to create boundaries for her, to protect her in her rest, to protect her in her creations. If he's stuck in control, then he is not allowing her to exist in her true form. The feminine needs to feel safe to be. That is what she's calling for. The feminine wants to feel safe, to create, to be in her energy without being siphoned, controlled, and manipulated, right? And this is the huge switch in masculine distortion, right? When the masculine goes from a place of taking, the power struggle of taking, right? His attempt to maintain control, and steps into a place of allowance, then his presence speaks for itself. His presence allows the feminine to rest, allows the feminine to be safe, to create. And so I'm talking about the internal balance, but I'm talking about the collective balance, and I'm talking about the balance in partnerships, right? And really, ultimately, it's rebalancing feminine and masculine energy in this realm. and moving from duality to unity consciousness, right? But if we sit here and look at our classic procreation example of life in the world, right? If a woman is creating life in her womb, if she's creating conscious life, what would be the role of our masculine in this situation, right? I kind of think we forgot. His role would be to protect her, right? To hold space for her, to make sure she's getting rest, nourishment, to make sure she's getting what she needs, right? He's not telling her what she needs, right? Oh, this is the protocol. If you want a healthy baby, this is the protocol, right? Like, that's control, and we can laugh at what I just did, but then like that's actually the controlling, distorted masculine, right? He can come in and start telling her what she needs to do with the kid. He can be out conquering, right? He's like, oh, let me go conquer an empire in the name of our unborn child. And it's like, no, that's literally not what she needs. She needs you to create a safe environment for her ecosystem to flourish, right? And through the distortion, we've completely shifted what that exchange looks like. And if we take that brewing of life consciousness in the womb energy and we apply that to what we're creating in our own being, right? What is our feminine creating? And then how is our masculine showing up in the world to stabilize that energy, to protect and support that energy, to create a safe environment, right, for her to bring that into life, right? And the huge switch here is the masculine distortion of the hero energy, right? The conqueror. He thinks it's about him. He thinks it's his mission. He thinks the world revolves around him. And he thinks everything, including his feminine, is beneath him. He's on a mission to be in power above everything, right? He has to be on top of the world, and everything is beneath him. Because what does that do? That gives him the most amount of control, right? It gives him the highest vantage point to look down on the rest of his life and control everything, right? But that is a distortion of masculine power. Because a true king knows it is not about him. And this is how the feminine is stepping into power as well, because she's also been in distortion, right? And so her approach has been pleading and nagging and trying to get the masculine to come back, to show up for her. Like, please, I don't need you out conquering the world. I need you here with me, right? So it's created that resistance in exchange, right? So this awakening and rise in the feminine has been the feminine finally taking her hands off and being like, you know what? I'm not going to keep trying to get you to be by my side. I'm going to do me. I'm going to be in my power. And this is why you hear so many women in their power, coming into their power, talking about, we're tired of being strong. We're tired of being men. We're tired of carrying so much weight while you're out there playing hero, while you're out there looking for external validation, right? She's done. The divine feminine is done. So she's pulled her energy back. She's come within herself, and she's reclaiming her own story. How many times has she been by his side and he's chosen his ego over her, right? She's not going to do it anymore. So now it's embodying the divine feminine and leaving the masculine to discover that he's alone in his own tower, or he's alone with the distorted feminine hanging out, until he realizes his role as the divine masculine and embodies that. She will not hold space for the distortion. So, the masculine is rising, and our feminine also has to recognize patience with that as well, because they're different energies. The masculine shows up differently. So part of the feminine stepping into her power is also allowing for the masculine to step into his, and allowing for his journey and his process, and not trying to control his process of coming there either, right? That's why your feminine is pulling her hands off and saying, I'm going to put that energy into me. and allow him to go through his journey of learning what that means. Collectively, we're seeing this in like pendulum energy, right? Because we're actively working on balancing this energy, there's extreme there's extreme polarity happening in those energies, distortions happening in those energies, right? Really weird things showing up in all kinds of ways in the world throughout time, and then obviously polarizing now because basically we've agitated this energy, right, to rebalance it. It's stirring up the impurities so that they can be removed and then rebalanced, right? How can we pay attention to this shifting within ourselves and collectively? It's acknowledging and holding space for both, right? If we're internally looking at, what does our feminine need to feel safe? And then what does our masculine need to feel safe, right? And the feminine, it does have a huge role. We have a huge role. It is challenging that now, you truly have to release the jadedness of your own heart for the patriarchal culture, right? The way that men have shown up in your own life, right? The way your internal masculine has shown up in your life, right? Because he's also been forcing you into, some kind of reality, right? Like your feminine is probably like, you know what? I just want to go travel the world in pain. And then your masculine's like, no, you need a real job. Do stuff, right? So part of that rebalancing is, forgiving the masculine for not showing up for like millennials, Yeah, trust me. I know it's a lot of forgiveness, right? But you have to allow him to show up for you as well, right? You have to allow him to show up for you. Because, and often, and I'm saying, because this is how it's reflecting in society, women don't realize that men actually are sensitive. They're very sensitive. And they hide that behind, the conditioning of the distorted masculine, right? They haven't been given the space to open up like we have, and they haven't been given the space socially, right, to communicate their feelings, to even have feelings. So if you're frustrated because your man won't open up to you, right, you have to recognize how much more emotional conditioning he's breaking through to even have that conversation with you. And then you open that doorway with him, and then boom, you react out of emotional feminine wounding, right? Where do you think that masculine is going? He's going back into his turtle shell, right? It was a lot for him to open up to you and meet you there. And then as soon as you did, you use that to take control instead of honoring his presence and showing up, right? It's like, oh, now it's my turn, right? That's the wounding. Now it's my turn to get back at the masculine. And it's like, no, that's the distortion. That needs to be healed in you. So yes, the task of the divine feminine is a huge ask. It really is. We're being asked to hold it down, to step into our own power, to hold that container until the masculine shows up and meets us there. And then you're being asked to do that gracefully and have forgiveness and have patience and release control, release timeline, release the need to have it be the way that you see it, right? Because that's also the distorted feminine. She's come out in this way where she's trying to make everything a certain way, right? Because that's her attempt at trying to pull the masculine back in, right? But the truth is when the feminine steps into this energy, because the feminine leads spiritually, okay? The feminine leads energetically. And so when she steps into her power and she honors that and she releases that, then she does open the door for the masculine. And then he has an opportunity to show up for her from a place of truth, from a place of the divine masculine. And that's when the feminine, receives what she's claimed in her life, right? Because that's the truth of divine feminine. She sees through it because she knows that if she were to continue in the exchange of control, She's just feeding into that energy she does not want, right? So that's why she transmutes that energy, because when she's in that place of her power and forgiveness and grace and presence, the masculine wants to come in and support her and hold that space. And then she receives what she needs. So yeah, it's a challenging path, but it is the path that gets you there. And without that, you're just living in distortion of not only your own feminine energy, but then you're continuing to create that exchange with the distorted masculine as well, right? So, and again, I'm talking about energy. So this is going to show up inside of you. This is going to show up in your relationships. This is going to show up where you work. It's going to show up wherever you are, because it's being asked to be looked at. It's being asked to be seen and to be balanced.